Today, I've gathered the most discussed Invincible matchup, which you guys sent in from Google Forms, and I'm going to be answering them in today's video. A lot of these questions were very hard. You guys really had me thinking, because as we know, power scaling in Invincible is very inconsistent, so feel free to correct me if you disagree with any of my takes, or if I got something wrong. But without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, first up, we got 5 Season 1 Immortals versus current Mark. Okay. As I've said before, when power scaling the Immortal, I like to start from his best fight, which was against Omni because he really wasn't holding anything back, and he had a crazy adrenaline buff because he had just been resurrected and he was out for revenge. And if you go watch the fight back, you'll see the Immortal bloodied up Omni quite a bit, and at this point in the series, the only characters who had really done that was Red Rush and War Woman. To be fair though, Omni was already a little worn out as he was fighting the kaiju, so while Immortal was at full strength, Omni wasn't. But this was still a mid to high diff fight for Omni probably more mid, which is impressive for Immortal. So if we compare this Immortal to Season 3 Invincible, I still think 5 to 6 Immortals can do the job. But if we're talking Season 3 Immortal, it's a different game because he's just so much weaker. He can't really do anything. It's gonna have to be like 10 Season 3 Immortals against 1 Mark for them to win. Okay, number 2, Omni versus Alan, who wins? I know we haven't seen much of Alan fighting to discuss the true extent of his strength, but we know enough about his nature and background to know that he probably is strong enough to beat Omni because Alan isn't even natty, bro. The Unopans had him boofing steroids as a fetus just to make sure he was strong enough to kill a viltrumite. That is the whole purpose of the experiment on him. So if he wasn't strong enough to kill viltrumites, it would kind of defeat the purpose. And plus, considering how much stronger he got after his near-death experience, I reckon he is strong enough to beat Omni in a 1v1 now. And that isn't to underplay Omni we know how strong he is too. But I think Alan's buff has definitely pushed him over the line to beat Omni Speaking of Omni though, now we have Thragg versus Omni See, I just got done reading the first Viltrumite War, and I can tell you for sure, Omni has 0 chance of beating Thragg in a 1v1, and I can't really explain this without spoiling, so if you don't want to hear any spoilers, skip ahead. But basically, what happened towards the end of the war was Thragg just started flexing on everyone and showing the true difference in power that he has, because he just straight up ripped Thaddeus's head off of his body like it was nothing. Look at Alan's face, bro, he's traumatized, and Omni said it himself, there was no way he could beat him, and boy was he right, because Thragg just disembowels Omni after this. So yeah, Omni has 0 chance of winning against Thragg. Cool, number 4, we got Conquest versus every non-Viltrumite hero. I think the non-Viltrumite heroes have got this in the bag. Okay, who are the strongest non-Viltrumites? We got Alan, Eve, Tech Jacket, Immortal if you want to throw him in there too, Space Racer. I know we don't talk about him too much because he's way more important in the comics, but he has been mentioned enough in the show. And that space gun he has, what's it called? The Infinity Ray, that can destroy literally anything. To be honest, this team is even overkill because Alan on his own is already going to be a close call between him and Conquest, but throwing in all these others is definitely a win for the non-Viltrumite heroes. To make it more fair, I think just take Alan out of the fight. That way it's sort of a closer matchup, even though I think Eve could actually carry the fight because we know how OP she is now, but maybe that's only when her limiters are off, so she might have to get close to death first before she can actually properly activate. But Tech Jacket, Immortal and Space Racer could actually do something. So either way, I think the non-Viltrumite heroes have got this one. Alright, next up, this is a rogue one, Powerplex versus Multipaul. Seeing as Multipaul and Powerplex never meet or fight each other, they wouldn't know how each other's powers work and stuff, but let's just assume for the sake of the fight that they actually do know how each other's powers work. If that's the case, then I don't think Powerplex can beat Multipaul, because with Powerplex, he can be really strong if he gets hit enough times. Like he even took out one variant solo, but we also saw how quickly he can be stopped if those fighting him know how his powers work, because if you aren't hitting him to make him stronger, then he has no strength, and at the start of the fight, he's gonna have to get hit a few times to properly activate, which is why Multipaul would probably be able to beat Powerplex because he can just clone a bunch of himself and take him down without much effort. But that's low-key too easy. If it was the other way around and they didn't know how each other's powers worked, now it's a bit more interesting because Powerplex can keep getting hit over and over again by Multipaul, and then once he's charged up enough, he can unleash all the electricity and definitely kill Multipaul. If he can burn a Viltrumite to a crisp, I don't think he's gonna have a problem killing like 100 clones of Multipaul. Alright, the next one says, how many Rex Splodes does it take to kill Omni See, at first, I thought there was no way Rex can kill Omni His explosions just don't do enough damage to harm Viltrumites. Just like we saw in his fight against the Invincible variant. He exploded a bunch of stuff and he came out of the smoke looking unscathed. But this is where the power scaling in Invincible just goes off a cliff, because all of a sudden Rex is able to charge up his whole skeleton, which is somehow powerful enough to kill a viltrumite, even though the explosion was really small and his previous explosions weren't doing any damage. It's not adding up. Let's look at it this way. The explosion Cecil used on Omni-Man was only powerful enough to make his nose bleed. That explosion was much larger and definitely more powerful than what Rex was able to do by blowing himself up. But then Rex is able to kill a viltrumite with his explosion. Listen, I'm not trying to downplay my goat Rex, but it's definitely just plot convenience that he was able to kill that variant. That explosion should be leaving nothing but a scratch on his suit. So if we are being realistic, there is no amount of Rex Splode sufficient enough to take out Omni-Man. But an OP plot convenience ability is still an ability. So at the end of the day, if that explosion is powerful enough to kill a viltrumite, then get 100 Rex Splodes and they can charge up like creepers and kill Omni-Man. Okay, next we got 50 Immortals versus 1 Conquest. See, again, this has got to be overkill. I genuinely think the Immortal wins this. I base most of my power scaling on him from season 1 because this was his peak strength and he really had hands back then. No BS hacks, no ridiculous power buff, just straight adrenaline and revenge fueled all that strength. So if only 1 Immortal is making Omni-Man work that hard, what do you think 50 are gonna do to Conquest? This is like 100 men versus 1 gorilla all over again. I don't think Conquest has a chance. Like, it's fun to imagine Conquest locking in and just running through 50 Immortals like it's nothing, but it's not practical. 50 Immortals is still smart and he'll be able to do something. It would be way too much for Conquest to handle. And even more evident is that the viltrumite closest in strength to Conquest is Omni-Man. I know Conquest is the second strongest, so you would expect him to be close in strength to Thragg, but the difference between Thragg and Conquest is massive. So the best person to compare Conquest to is Omni-Man. And I won't go into comic spoilers, but most comic book readers will know that between Conquest and Omni-Man, it's already a coin toss matchup. The reason this is important is because going back to Omni-Man vs Immortal, he showed real strength against Omni-Man. I know earlier I said this was a mid to high diff fight, but it was definitely more mid, because after Omni-Man stops worrying about the kaiju, he locks in and is able to beat the Immortal pretty quickly. But the Immortal was still able to work Omni-Man nonetheless. So if there were suddenly 50 Immortals here, I can assure you they would have stomped Omni-Man. And if Omni-Man and Conquest are close in strength, what's stopping him from doing the same to Conquest? So for once, I have to back the Immortal, and I definitely think 50 would win this fight easily. Okay, the next one says, how many reanimen to kill Immortal? See, if we're talking season 1 reanimen, I'd say like 3, because those reanimen were way stronger. Season 1 Mark couldn't even beat one of them, and the 3 which Omni-Man fought were giving him some serious trouble, although I think those ones were made using dead soldiers, so that might add to them a little bit. But the reanimen in season 3 get blown through like it's nothing. Obviously Mark has gotten stronger, but it's definitely more so that the reanimen in season 3 have gotten significantly weaker. It must be something to do with the mass production of reanimen, because there is so much more of them now, and I guess they can't keep up the quality. But if Mark can destroy reanimen with 1 punch, I'm sure Immortal can do that as well. So it's hard to say exactly how many in season 3 would be enough to kill Immortal, but it's gotta be over like 50 for sure. And lastly, we got Conquest versus the 3 strongest variants. Who wins this fight? Well, firstly, who are the 3 strongest variants? I assume it's Sinister Mark, Omni Mark and Mohawk Mark, but could they beat Conquest? Well, with current Invincible versus Conquest, if he actually had to fight Conquest on his own and Conquest was locked in, he would have been low diffed for sure. And current Mark is probably stronger than the other 3 variants, or maybe he's weaker than Omni Mark, but that's just speculation, I can't say for sure. But yeah, if Conquest can low diff current Mark, can 3 variants similar in strength to current Mark beat Conquest? That's the question. I think they have a good chance. I'd be more comfortable if we picked an extra variant. I think 4 would do the job. 3 is cutting it close. It would definitely be a high diff fight for sure. Extremely high. But I am slightly in favor for the variants to win this fight. But anyways, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know what kind of videos you want to see in the future. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.